Reiwa Gaming Matt's Japanese Nintendo Direct Mini Impression Time. Hi everyone, Matt here. It's time to do a little quick video. I'm just doing this off the cuff here very quickly. No major graphics or anything like that because I just want to talk about the just shown in the last few hours Nintendo Direct Mini. Nintendo announced all of a sudden many hours ago that they were going to do a Nintendo Direct Mini that was going to focus on third-party titles, games that had already been announced, and things of that nature. And of course, people were really excited for it. And earlier tonight, they showed it, and I ended up watching the Japanese Direct as well as the American Direct. I'm going to focus on the Japanese Direct here. A lot of people are talking about the American Direct and what was announced on that stream. Honestly, I got to tell you, I watched both. I watched the Japanese one first. The Japanese Direct was far better than the American Direct. They showed more titles. They talked about more things. It was longer. It was about 12 minutes long, while the American Direct was about 8 minutes long. And while most of the games did overlap, there were some announcements that were only made on the Japanese Direct. So we're going to talk about those really quickly. So I'm just going to go through it and give my impressions. So the first thing they showed in this Nintendo Direct was something called Sakana of Rice and Ruin. Apparently, I think this game's coming out from Xseed in America. Never heard of it. They showed a little bit of gameplay of it, and apparently this game's coming out later this year, I think in November. And I was looking online. It looks like it's also coming out in November in the United States. Looked okay. It was a Marvelous game, an Xseed game, so could be interesting. But it seemed to be just a simple game to show off from the very beginning. It wasn't shown on the American Direct as far as I can tell. So I was a little surprised it was the first game they showed in the Japanese Direct. But that's how they started off. Then secondly, they went into the game that we had heard about last week. I talked about in the news last week, and that was Atelier Ryzer 2. Uh, and they showed some gameplay footage of that. They talked about some of the new systems in it, the new graphics. The main character from the original game is on that presentation front and center. It's pretty much the only character they showed during the entire trailer, and they said that the game is coming out this winter in Japan. And once again, nothing on the American Direct, which is kind of surprising because this game was unveiled due to a rating on the Australian rating board site a few days ago. So it's kind of strange that the game was talked about in the Japanese Direct, which is not surprising, but not talked about on the American Direct. I'm personally excited. I think that's a great series, and I think that was a fun game, the last one. So it's gonna be nice to continue on with that one next. Although I still gotta finish the first game, but I do like what I've played of it. Next, both the American and Japanese Direct talked a lot about the game Cadence of Hyrule, which was a game that came out last year, which was a game that was basically, what was it, Crypt of the Necromancer or something, or some sort of dance music, not dance, it was somewhere like a music puzzle game with an adventure aspect to it, and they had made a sequel to it using the Zelda franchise. And apparently that game is going to be getting DLC, a bunch of DLC that will include new characters, I think new music, and even masks from the old games, the old Zelda games, and things like that. It looked interesting if you're a fan of the game. I've played a little bit of it. I think it's cool, but it's not a game that really hit me very excitingly so much, so I put it aside, but I kind of want to go back to it and try it again. But the DLC, apparently the first DLC is coming in a few days. There's a season pass also that's going to come out, and also they're going to release a physical version later this year that will have everything in the game. The original game was just download only, so that's going to be available to everyone. Again, I think that's pretty cool, but it's not the type of game that I was really, really excited for. I was surprised that we would see anything about it today in the Direct. So for those fans who like it, that's great. I'm a big Zelda fan. I'd rather see other Zelda games, though, than that one. Next in the Japanese Direct was a game that probably a lot of people are going to be very happy to hear about, and that is the new news about Momotaro Densu Showa Heisei Reiwa, which is a classic Japanese video game board game series from Konami. And yes, Konami still makes video games. They still make many games and many series. None of this, Konami hate out there that a lot of people have in the West. Obviously, they've pretty much pulled out their video games from the West, but in Japan, they're still making miniseries. They're still making games for a lot of titles, and this is one of them. And this has been a very popular series for many years, and it got a real real boost a few years ago when the series was presented on a very popular Japanese comedy talk show, where all of a sudden people started to saying, "Hey, I want to start playing this game again." And this version that's coming out on the Switch has been highly anticipated. It was announced last year. Well, it's getting released, I believe, this November, if I remember correctly, from the actual release date. I've never played one of these games. Maybe I'll pick it up. It's going to take place, of course, all over Japan. That's the whole thing. It's sort of a train board game thing, and there's a sort of the theme is about the eras of Japan: the Showa era, the Heisei era, and the Reiwa era. The Reiwa era, of course, where I get my name from, Reiwa Gaming Matt. Reiwa started last year. This is the second year of Reiwa. It's the new generation, and yeah, that looked really good. So obviously, a lot of fans are going to be excited for that. After that, we got a big roll of footage of many games that are coming out in the next few months. Games like Fairy Tale, the Jump fighting game that came out last year that they said was never going to come out on Switch. And now it's coming out on Switch with a deluxe edition. They showcased some sort of shooting game. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it was also shown in more detail in the American Direct. Didn't look interesting to me at all, so I was like, no wonder they only showed it for a few seconds on the Japanese Direct. They showed a bunch of like visual novels and even that Ninjara game that was already released for free, coming out in physical. So they talked about a lot of games in like a short 1 minute montage of games. And so at this point, it was a nice direct. It was really, really good. But then they hit with two major announcements, and they actually handled these announcements differently on both directs. And I think that the way they did it on the Japanese Direct was much better, and I'm glad they did it that way. I think if they had done it that way on the way they did on the American Direct, I don't think I would have had as much of excitement. But in the Japanese Direct, the first thing they said, they have one more announcement, and it turned out it was from Atlas. And I had a feeling that we were going to get this announcement because of what was released on the Super Famicom Nintendo Online service a couple weeks ago, or a couple of days ago, I should say. And, well, we finally saw it. They finally saw new footage of Shin Megami Tensei 5, the game that was announced many years ago, that's been in the quiet mode ever since then. They showed off some footage of the game itself, mostly like movie footage. They showed off what looks to be the main character. And they gave the big news that the game is coming out next year as a worldwide simultaneous release. So it's going to be released all around the world at the same time. This is probably good news for people in Japan, because the chances of the Japanese version of the game to include English on it, so a person like myself can buy it in the store and play it in English, that's a great thing. Now, I always play Shin Megami Tensei in Japanese anyway, so it doesn't matter if it's English or Japanese or not. But it is great to hear that game is coming. When in 2021? I have a theory for that. I'm going to talk about it in a second, because all of a sudden, after that announcement, they make another announcement, and that is that they showed a clock of 2021, and it started to flip back in time, and all of a sudden it goes down to 2003, and I immediately knew what that meant. That meant Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne. Yes, out of nowhere, they have announced a HD remaster of Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, which was only known as Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne in America, because the series had not came to America before that. And the game looks great. They showed off footage of it. Looks fantastic in HD. They had some like voiceover talent in there as well. Sounds like they were going to get that in the game. And the big news they announced in the Japanese stream was that this game is coming out on October 29th of this year, which is fantastic news. Unfortunately, if you live in the West, that's not what you heard. In fact, like I said, the Western announcement, they first actually talked about Nocturne first, and then talked about Shin Megami Tensei 5. And when they announced the Nocturne release, they said the game was coming out in spring of 2021 in the West. So it sounds like the Japanese release obviously is going to have a nice little long 6 months or so exclusivity, I guess. And even bigger news was that after the Direct came out, word spread out that actually this game was not just coming to the Nintendo Switch, they were also going to release it for the PlayStation 4. So there's going to be a PlayStation 4 version of this kind of surprising considering that Shin Megami Tensei 5 is an exclusive to the Switch. The Shin Megami Tensei series has been a Nintendo exclusive as of late, while the Persona games have been a Sony exclusive. You would think that that would have stayed the same, but Nocturne of Curse was a big Sony title when it was released way back in 2003, so it's probably nice to see that that game comes out on the PlayStation 4 as well. I probably will get it because of the trophies. I'm a big trophy nut, so I love that. But Shin Megami Tensei 5 still is a Nintendo exclusive. So that was the Nintendo Direct in the West. In America, they showed a couple other games, mainly like a WWE game, but their Direct was just not as exciting as the Japanese one. The Japanese one had a lot more interesting games. Had Atelier Ryza 2, which was obviously awesome. Momotaro was awesome. The announcement that Nocturne is coming out October 29th. It just was a much more well-rounded video than what we had probably would have expected, especially considering how I felt disappointing the American Direct was. Even though they pretty much showed the same games and they were really cool games, there just was more to the Japanese Direct. And I always feel that's the case. So if I were to give a grade for this Direct, it's an absolute A+. I mean, for me, Atelier Ryza 2, to see that is actually true and actually running and it's coming, that's a big one for me. Obviously, Shin Megami Tensei 5 news that it's coming out next year is great. Nocturne coming out this year and next year in the West is great. Even the Hyrule, the Cadence of Hyrule DLC, that's pretty cool to see that game getting new material. And the Momotaro Densetsu game or Densu game, it looks really good. Looks like a lot of fun. It's going to be a big hit here. And again, they showed off what's coming in the near future. But what we didn't get was Nintendo titles, and we knew we weren't going to get those. The question is now is when is Nintendo going to talk about their own releases? They did say that there's going to be more of these mini directs for their partner companies. So obviously we're going to see those in the future, but we need to know what's coming out from Nintendo in the next few months. Obviously, we have a big show with Microsoft in the next couple days. Maybe they're going to wait until Microsoft talks, and then they'll come talk about themselves. But hopefully we get the Nintendo side of the story because we'd love to hear Nintendo's new titles in the future. Well, that's my whole talk about the Nintendo Direct. Again, I thought it was great. I think the Japanese Direct really hit the nail as usual. And, obviously the American Direct, I think they could have done a better job. It would have been nice to show more videos. But that's what you get. Obviously, this has been a quick video, but I'm hoping to get some more videos out this week. I'm still working on Deadly Premonition 2. Hope to have some impressions or a full review soon. Also Ghost of Tsushima. Maybe Paper Mario as well. But until then, take care, have a good day, and see you later. Tune in this week for more Weibo Gaming Matt videos and reviews.